can't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, today's video, I'm going to be talking about Superman #3 by Joshua Williamson and Jamal Campbell. This issue does something pretty interesting, something I was kind of waiting to see if they were going to go in this direction with Superman and Lex Luthor and Livewire, but just because of some little hints and teases that we've seen, some of the key art that we have seen over the last few months leading up to issue #1 of this relaunch of Superman. But what I can definitely say is Joshua Williamson and Jamal Campbell did not disappoint. One of the key things I really want to talk about here is the usage of Livewire, as well as the usage of Lex Luthor in this. What I love about this issue is how Superman is, in a roundabout way, putting some of the utmost respect on the character of Livewire, a character who I feel like has never really gotten the shine that she deserves. Now, we have seen other characters like Killer Frost during the early stages of the DC Rebirth era, where she was elevated from being just a common villain to actually being a member of the Justice League of America. And while that has technically kind of been forgotten about for the most part, it always kind of felt like, well, what's going to happen to other characters like Livewire, as well as another character I'll talk about here in a little bit. Superman winds up relying on both Livewire and Lex Luthor in this, busting them out of Stryker's Island because he finally admits he needs their help. More specifically Lex Luthor, but he really needs Livewire just the same. But the reason why Livewire is used here is because her power to generate and manipulate electricity is necessary to help shut down Parasite. Parasite has always craved power. He needs it. He needs to feed on power, on life force to keep himself alive, and thanks to the modifications done by some of Lex Luthor's former villains, the villainous Graft and Dr. Farm, the idea here is that since Parasite is splitting into all of these various clones, Superman believes that they can get all those clones in one place, and to do so, they're going to use Livewire as a lightning rod, both figuratively and literally, to draw every last single one of those clones into one spot. And Superman, despite actually having been contaminated by the Parasite strain, because Parasite is no longer just relegated to the clones that we see storming Metropolis, but also to a microscopic airborne level, it's all of that is being attracted to Livewire using the new Super Corp logo, which is now the Superman shield, the crest of the House of L on top of what used to be Lex Corp, using that to draw in all those clones, and then Superman convincing Parasite to just consume the clones, because the clones are actually harming Parasite as well. All these clones running roughshod across Metropolis are eating up every potential food source that Parasite could even get his hands on. So while they're consuming everything around them, the actual core Parasite is not really getting anything. And Superman does convince Parasite to just consume the other versions of himself. It's basically like cannibalism, only you're eating yourself and it's not actually hurting you. All of this actually works and manages to keep the Parasite strain under control, and Luthor has a concoction cooked up to get rid of the hazardous effects that Graft and Dr. Farm had inflicted on Parasite. Now, the reason why I'm bringing all this up is because this puts Superman in an actionable position, one where now he is decided, based on the fact that Lex Luthor actually did not try to escape, and more importantly, while he initially wanted to kill Parasite to get rid of him, he didn't take the opportunity to do it when he could have. The thing I loved about this was not only did this put some of the ultimate respect on Livewire, but this also put more respect on the relationship between Lex Luthor and Superman. Now, one of the things I've been talking about is how Lex Luthor, as of late, he is the guy that Superman kind of needs to be listening to right now. He has been in Superman's ear since Action Comics 1050, at least since he was put in Stryker's Island. That said, Lex Luthor, while he is definitely trying to coach Superman up and get him on the level that he needs to be to take on the villains of Graft and Dr. Farm, Superman has been incredibly hesitant to take any of his advice or to even try and work with him. He didn't even want to have anything to do with Supercorp. But now, all of that has changed because now he's judging Lex Luthor not based on past history but by recent actions. Lex Luthor did not try to escape or even try to kill Parasite when he had an opportunity to. Superman is taking this as a sign of personal growth. And one of the things I thought was really interesting here is that he gives Lex Luthor something that would typically be reserved for someone who would typically go under the moniker of Superman's pal, like a Jimmy Olsen or some such. But he has given Lex Luthor a gift. He has gifted him a Superman watch. Now, this is something that will probably seem innocuous to a lot of people, but this watch looks like it's very similar to the very same one that Jimmy Olsen has always had. A watch whose history goes back as far as 1954's Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen #1. Typically, the Superman watch is a way for Jimmy Olsen to let Superman know when and where he might be needed, typically sending out a signal that only Superman would be able to hear. And then Superman investigating said signal, thinking that maybe something might be up. It was kind of a way for Jimmy Olsen to get Superman where Superman probably needed to be the most. Well, Superman has given him something very similar. Now, while Lex Luthor technically doesn't need any Superman watches, he already had one of his own that he cooked up in Action Comics 1050 shortly before his being incarcerated on Stryker's Island. His version of the Superman watch wasn't a way to let Superman know where he needed to be, but was more of a way for him to send a sonic signal that would actually hurt Superman. Now, it would also drag his attention to where he needed to be. This was something that, for those who may or may not be familiar with the old Christopher Reeve films, this was actually a trick that Lex Luthor used in those movies, probably with the more recent one being in Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, where he would send out a signal, it would hurt Superman and attract him to Lex Luthor's location. Lex Luthor made something very similar in Action Comics 1050. Now, this watch is something that's going to be very different, and I like the idea that while it does have the Superman logo, it also has an L on top of it, which I guess is a symbolic way of Superman letting Lex know that they're going to be on board with one another. Now, this isn't the first time Lex Luthor has received something like this from Superman. There is a version of Lex Luthor on Earth 149 who received something very similar from that Earth's version of Superman. In Superman number 149, this instance that took place in 1961, this was pretty much a situation where Lex Luthor had pretended to be a quotey fingers good guy, preying on the naivety of Superman at the time and tricking him into believing that Lex was actually on the level, to the point that they worked together up until the moment Lex Luthor was ready to strike and use kryptonite to weaken Superman, which ultimately allowed him to kill Superman once and for all. The instance of Superman giving Lex that watch in Superman number 149 is something that's probably very similar here. It probably even functions the same way as Jimmy Olsen's signal watch, just in terms of how with Jimmy, it was a way for Superman to know when he was in danger, and maybe in this case, it's a way for Lex Luthor to get Superman's attention when he needs, and probably just like with Jimmy's, and probably just like with the Lex Luthor of Earth 149, his watch is probably set to a different frequency. I don't think this is Superman giving Lex the watch he was initially using back. I also like what is going on here with Supercorp as well. It's one of those situations I feel like Superman might just be angling to fix some of the issues that he's had with the villains he's faced off with in the past. Because we see characters like Livewire getting an opportunity to try and do something good, and while she does go right back to Stryker's Island, something tells me Superman might call on her once again. And while Parasite had pretty much ran roughshod across Metropolis and was about to run roughshod across the entire world, it wasn't necessarily Parasite who was trying to do it. He was manipulated into that situation. I feel like with Graft and Dr. Farm showing their hand as of late, revealing in the previous two issues that they were already doing autopsies and dissecting Bizarro, as well as hinting at one of their next targets being yet another villain from Superman's Rogues Gallery, Silver Banshee, something tells me Superman's gonna wind up taking these villains who have been manipulated by Graft and Dr. Farm and then putting them together under the banner of Supercorp. Whether or not that actually does turn out to be the case is another story altogether, but I would actually like to see Superman attempt to redeem some of the people who he has regarded as villains since time immemorial. It may not happen, but I could definitely see something like this on the horizon. I think this would be the best possible move Superman could do with Supercorp. Yeah, sure, you can bring in the rest of the Superman family, which I don't think is far out of the realm of possibility either, though it does feel like Superman is being very guarded about working with Lex Luthor in this capacity, so he's probably going to try and keep them at arm's length. He'll probably involve them, but not on the same levels. He'll probably involve everyone else. He'll more likely just let Steelworks handle that side of things, because he does still have both John Henry Irons as well as Natasha Irons running that aspect of things. So he has a checks and balances in place, most likely in case this whole Supercorp thing goes ass over tea kettle. But once again, I do like that idea. What if Superman were to actually take Parasite and Livewire, Silver Banshee, and of course already working with Lex Luthor and Mercy, putting them to work for Supercorp as a means of redemption, as well as just giving them probably some better character options? It would definitely remind me of what we saw not too terribly long ago with Batman, when he took in the villain Clayface, took Clayface under his wing and actually tried to reform him and turn him into a force for good as opposed to a force for evil. I would love to see Superman do stuff like that. I feel like Superman doesn't do that enough. I mean, yeah, he does try and talk down his villains, but ultimately they usually just don't want to hear what it is he has to say anyway. But I would love to see Kal-El actually go all in on something like that. I'm a huge fan of reformed villains, sue me. But anyways, that's everything I wanted to talk about with Superman #3. If you enjoyed this video, do the YouTube thing, like, share, comment, subscribe, and make sure to tap that notification bell so that way you don't miss out on any videos, because I post new videos throughout the week, plus live stream every Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. Until next time, let me know what you thought about Superman #3. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.